Thomas Jefferson's what is it, first inaugural address, I think in 1801. Read that, and if you'll read through, even if you just go and find a copy of it online, you can type into Google or something. Hit Control F and type in majority if you don't want to read the whole thing. Majority, go down to one you'll find on there if you look at the different examples, and you'll see one that talks about majority is simply a principle that is used in a republic. Republics must have a majority rule of some sort in a voting process. You have to have this. I mean, you really can't escape it. He says it's a vital part of a republic. You have to have that. And of course, Thomas Mullens does, and I agree with him in here, he does say that, democracy is not a part of that. Our country was never meant to be a democracy. And that will be important later, so keep that in mind. But I do want to cover something. This is, I can't call it anything but perverted. What he's about to say here. He says, and I'm going to quote Thomas Mullens right here. He says, in order to answer the question posed by Bastiat at the beginning of this chapter, remember I just quoted him, he's talking about liberty. He said, Tom says, we have to go back to the beginning. Our founding fathers faced no such quandary about the definition of freedom. They knew exactly what it was. Tom, again, I have to disagree with you. They knew what liberty was. Freedom is another secular, and I want to say humanistic definition. We'll get to that another time. But here's what Tom said. Now listen to this carefully. He says, they were children of the age of reason and derived their ideas about freedom directly from the Enlightenment philosophers. Now stop right there. This has got to be, I really don't want to say it's a lie. I hope he's just ignorant. Because they were not children of the age of reason. Who is making this up? Tom, I don't know if you got taught this, but this is absolutely wrong, whoever taught you this, or if you came up with it yourself, I certainly hope you're not lying about this. First of all, the Age of Reason was not published until 1794. The Declaration of Independence, which Tom refers to here in just a moment, that's what he's going to be talking about when he refers to this comment that they're the children of the Age of Reason. The Declaration of Independence, everybody knows, of course, was written in 1776. First of all, my first question is, how can a document, or documents, in fact, be based off of another document that was written 20 years later? That doesn't make any logical sense at all. Where he's pulling that from, I don't know, but that's incorrect. In fact, when he refers to this Age of Reason, and he does this multiple times, I would suspect he does it multiple times in the book, because in the articles he's written online, he basically just clings to and attaches on to the Age of Reason. He quotes from it over and over and over. And it's not, first of all, people need to understand what the Founding Fathers really thought about the Age of Reason. Let me give you a few examples here. I've got a long list of them. Let's see here. John Adams wrote, the Christian religion is, above all the religions that ever prevailed or existed in ancient or modern times, the religion of wisdom, virtue, equity, and humanity. He said, let the blackguard, and when he says blackguard, he means like a scoundrel or a rogue. He said, let the blackguard Paine say what he will. Okay, the bottom line is Paine, when he went to France and wrote this book, when he came back, he was not welcomed back very well by the founders. They did not really approve of what he was writing here. Samuel Adams wrote Paine, and he told him, when I heard you had turned your mind to a defense of infidelity, I felt myself much astonished and more grieved that you had attempted a measure so injurious to the feelings and so repugnant to the true interests of so great a part of the citizens of the United States. Benjamin Rush wrote to his friend John Dickinson. He wrote about Paine's Age of Reason. He said it was absurd and impious. Charles Carroll, signer of the Declaration, wrote that Thomas Paine's works was blasphemous writings against the Christian religion. Let's see here. John Witherspoon wrote that Paine was ignorant of human nature as well as an enemy to the Christian faith. And even Elias, now I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, Elias Boudinot or Boudinot or something, it's French. He was a president of Congress at one point. He wrote a book called The Age of Revelation, which is a full-length rebuttal to Paine's works, Paine's Age of Reason. So, I mean, there's a list of more people that were against Thomas Paine here, but I just want to give you a few examples, and then quote from Benjamin Franklin. See, Thomas Paine, when he was in France, he sent Benjamin Franklin a copy of his manuscript before he published it. And Benjamin Franklin wrote him back discussing it. Now I'm going to paraphrase some of this and then I'll quote it. Thomas Jefferson is basically trying to explain to him that Thomas Paine got all his values and virtues and things like that from religion, then wrote the Age of Reason to speak out of religion and tried to trash it away, saying, almost claiming that he attributes to himself his own virtues. This is the wrong way to approach it, and Benjamin Franklin even knew this. He wrote to him, he said, "For among us it is not necessary that a youth to be raised into the company of men should prove his manhood by beating his mother." Well, that's what he's talking about. He says, you're trying to destroy where you came from and then attribute everything to yourself. This is the wrong way to approach it. I'd like to read the last part of Benjamin Franklin's letter here. Excuse me. He said, "I would advise you, therefore, not to attempt unchaining the tiger, but to burn this piece before it is seen by another person, whereby you will save yourself a great deal of mortification by the enemies it may raise against you, and perhaps a good deal of regret and repentance. If men are so wicked with religion, what would they be without it?" He was trying to urge him properly that it was a corruption of the truth, and so urged him not to publish it, but of course Thomas Paine went ahead and did it anyway. So, Tom, whatever you're writing here concerning the founders being the children of the Age of Reason, I would have to give you the same advice that Benjamin Franklin gave Thomas Paine for the Age of Reason. I think you need to burn this piece, or at least you need to go back and correct it, at the very least. But you ought to do something about this before another person reads it, because it's wrong, and you're teaching the wrong things here. And I think part of your efforts, as we get into looking at this, and I get a little further into this, and people are going to see you're really trying to exclude God from liberty. And we'll see the evidence of that in a moment. But Tom Mullens, continues on saying, while these philosophers, and he also mentions especially John Locke. Now, they did get, now it is incorrect. At one point I had responded to Tom Mullens telling him that the founders, like Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, where he was getting the term law of nature from, was in part from William Blackstone's Commentaries on Law. I told him that they did not get it from John Locke's writings. That's actually not true. When I went and did a little deeper research, they did. But the problem is that Tom Mullens quotes particular sections of John Locke, but doesn't get to the basic fundamentals that John Locke wrote about. John Locke wrote in his 2 treatises on government. When he wrote in this, there are some particular specific fundamentals that John Locke was trying to talk about. And Thomas Mullens, I have never seen him quote the fundamentals of it. And I think purposely, and I will get to those fundamentals in a moment, I'll tell you what those are, that really contradict what Thomas Mullens is writing in here. But he says, while these philosophers were powerful thinkers, and their ideas were revolutionary at the time, the principles of liberty are relatively simple. I agree, the principles of liberty are relatively simple. But what are they? Well, we'll get to that. Then he refers to common sense. Now, I have to say that the book Common Sense that he's referring to is actually quite good. But the problem is, so far, when he's talking about the principles here, Tom Mullens does not mention the principles of the book of Common Sense when Thomas Paine wrote it. Thomas Paine wrote this book, or released Common Sense as a pamphlet, in 1776. I forget what the actual date was, but who cares? Point is that he released this. In this, he did strongly, and he did directly say that the powers by King George could not possibly be from God, because what King George was doing was in direct violation to the Scriptures, of course. And then he wrote in about the Jews and about their society, and that where they really had more of a republic than they had any kind of a king. Normally when they had a king, it was God-inspired, where God came and directly gave them a king. And of course, with the reflections of King David and King Solomon, I mean, the Jews, they had in Israel just an absolute explosion of prosperity when their kings were particularly humble and kneeled before God, who is the true king. And in a republic, what you really do, if you have a good constitutional republic under God, God is the king, or more specifically in America, Jesus Christ is the real king,